The alien academy was filled with loud voices. The training hall echoed with laughter. Young alien girls sat together, their silver eyes shining with pride. They were students of the Empire, daughters of warriors. They had been told since birth that their people were the strongest. In the middle of the crowd, one girl played a broadcast. It was an old clip about Earth. The screen showed blue oceans, green forests, and human cities, but the narrator's voice was cruel. Earth, he said, a weak planet, a place of fragile beings who cannot fight. The alien girls burst into laughter. Look at them, one girl shouted, pointing at the screen. So small, so soft, they are nothing compared to us. Another added, they cry in their wars, they beg for peace. They are children, not warriors. The laughter grew louder, echoing like a storm in the hall. They enjoyed mocking the unknown, mocking what they had never seen with their own eyes. To them, Earth was a joke, a place only good for stories of failure. Among the girls was Lyra, one of the boldest. She loved mocking the humans more than anyone. She stood and spread her arms like an actor on stage. Hear me, sisters, she said, one human against us. He would fall in seconds, he would run, he would cry, he would beg. The crowd cheered, the voices mixed like fire. But in the corner of the hall, a single device blinked. A hidden receiver picked up the signal of their broadcast. Far away, on a silent ship waiting near the station, a human heard every word. He sat still, his face without expression, his eyes fixed on the screen. He heard the mocking voices, the insults, the endless laughter. He did not speak, but inside him, something stirred. Not anger, but something deeper. Back at the academy, the alien girls continued their fun. They replayed old battle clips where humans lost wars. They cheered at every scene of human defeat. See, Lyra said with pride, their men are weak, their women are fragile. They could never survive in our world. Another girl laughed. Even their weapons look like toys. They slapped the table, shouted, and clapped. They thought themselves untouchable. But then the power in the hall flickered. The broadcast cut for a second. The screen went black. For a heartbeat, silence filled the room. Some of the girls looked around nervously. They had mocked for so long they forgot that silence could be frightening. When the screen returned, a strange symbol flashed. It was not from their empire, not from their academy. It was something old, something human. The girls frowned. What is that? Lyra asked, her voice no longer playful. For the first time, doubt touched her silver eyes, but before they could answer, the sound of boots echoed in the distance, the heavy steps of someone walking toward the hall. The laughter stopped. The air grew cold. The doors opened slowly, metal scraping against the floor. The mocking voices faded into silence. All eyes turned to the entrance, and there he stood, a human, tall and quiet, his face calm, his eyes sharp. He said nothing. He only looked at them. The same girls who laughed now felt a shiver. For the first time, the mocking voices could not rise. The silence was louder than their laughter. The air inside the academy was heavy. The girls stared at the man who had stepped into their hall. None of them expected this moment. For years they had spoken of humans like they were shadows, weak and unworthy. Yet here stood one in flesh and blood. He did not move quickly. His boots pressed against the metal floor with slow, steady sound. Every step echoed like thunder in their ears. His face showed no fear. His eyes carried no shame. He simply looked at them, calm as stone. Lyra was the first to break the silence. She forced a laugh, but her voice shook. Is this real? Did someone bring us a toy to play with? She wanted the others to laugh with her, but their voices refused to rise. The human stopped in the middle of the hall. He was taller than most of them expected. His shoulders broad, his posture strong. His clothing was simple, but clean. His hands looked like they had worked through storms and battles. His silence spoke louder than their jokes ever had. One girl whispered, "He heard us." All those words. Her voice carried guilt. She looked away, ashamed, but Lyra, still proud, stepped forward. Human, she said with mock courage. This is no place for your kind. Go back to your weak planet. The man did not answer. He only tilted his head slightly. His eyes met hers, and in that single look, Lyra felt a weight press down on her heart. It was not anger, not hate, but something deeper, a presence she could not explain. The doors behind him opened again. This time Academy guards appeared. They rushed in, surprised to see him there. Who let this one inside? One asked, his voice sharp, his weapon ready. The human raised his hand slowly, not in fear but in peace. The guard scanned him quickly. He came with a ship, a registered transport from Earth, the guard said, confusion in his tone. He has permission to be here, the alien girls gasped. They had thought no human would dare step foot in their academy. And yet this one had not only arrived, but arrived by right. Lyra clenched her fists, embarrassed. Her pride refused to bend. She turned to the other girls. If he wants to be here, let him prove himself. Let him show what Earth has. The guards looked uneasy, but the crowd of girls shouted in agreement. Their laughter returned, but weaker than before. They wanted to test him, humiliate him, remind themselves that humans were beneath them. The human still stood silent. Then slowly his lips moved. His voice was calm, deep, steady. What test? He asked. The hall fell silent again. The girls had not expected him to speak. His words were simple, but his tone was not the voice of weakness. It was the voice of someone who had known storms. Lyra smirked, regaining some of her courage. She clapped her hands. Bring the trial board, she said. The Academy kept a game of strength, a device that tested reflex, balance, and force. No outsider had ever beaten it. The guards hesitated. This is not wise, one muttered, but the crowd cheered and the trial board was brought forward. The machine lit up with red lights, humming with power. The alien girls watched eagerly. Some smiled with cruel joy, others with nervous curiosity. Lyra pointed at the board. Show us, human, she said. Show us what Earth calls strength. The man walked forward slowly. His boots echoed again. His hand touched the machine. He did not boast. He did not smile. He only placed his stance. Ready? The lights blinked faster. The test began. The alien girls leaned closer, hearts racing. Some hoped he would fail. Others secretly wanted him to win. As the first round flashed, the human moved. His motion was fast, precise, controlled. The machine beeped with approval. The crowd gasped. Round after round, the machine sped up, and yet he kept pace, calm and steady. His strikes were not wild but sharp. His balance never broke. The laughter that once filled the hall was gone. Now there was only silence and the sound of the machine. Finally, the board gave its result, a score no alien trainee had ever reached. The machine glowed green, declaring him the victor. The hall froze. No one laughed. No one cheered. They only stared at him. Lyra's lips trembled. Her pride shattered. She had mocked. She had laughed. But now she had no words. The human turned away from the machine, his voice quiet, almost like a whisper. Earth is not weak, he said. The alien girls shivered. For the first time their laughter had truly died. The training hall still felt heavy with silence. The trial board glowed with its final green light. The human had beaten the machine with ease. The alien girls stood frozen, unable to laugh, unable to speak. Lyra's pride burned like fire. Her cheeks glowed red as she tried to regain her strength. She stepped forward, her voice sharp. That was only a game, human. A trick of lights and speed. Let us see what you can really do. The other girls nodded. Their silver eyes flashed with anger and curiosity. They could not accept defeat so easily. They whispered among themselves, daring each other to speak louder. He is just lucky, one said. He cannot face us, said another. The guards looked uneasy. They had seen enough to know this human was no toy, yet they did not interfere. They wanted to see too. They wanted to know if the stories about Earth were wrong. Lyra raised her hand and pointed to the open arena at the center of the hall. It was a place for sparring, for training. Step there, she commanded. Face one of us. If you win, then maybe you deserve to stand here. If you lose, you will crawl back to your weak planet." The human did not argue. He walked slowly to the arena, his boots steady, his eyes calm. He gave no sign of pride, no sign of fear. His silence unsettled. The alien girls, more than words ever could, Lyra turned to the others. "Who will test him?" she asked. The crowd hesitated. Each girl felt the weight of the man's presence, but finally, one stepped forward. Her name was Ceres, a strong fighter among them. She was taller than Lyra, with sharp horns and muscles built from years of training. She smirked as she entered the arena. "I will show him the difference between us," she declared, her voice filled with confidence. The human only nodded. He raised his hands, not in fists, but in a calm stance. His posture looked strange too, the alien eyes loose yet balanced. Ceres laughed. "What is that? A weak dance?" The signal was given. Ceres rushed forward with speed. Her steps thundered on the floor. She struck with her arm, expecting to knock him down. But in one smooth move, the human shifted aside. Her strike hit only air. The girls gasped. Their laughter stopped. Ceres growled and attacked again. She tried with her fists, with her kicks. Each time the human stepped aside, dodging with quiet grace. His face never changed. Calm, patient, Lyra shouted. "Fight him. Don't let him mock you," Ceres roared. She tried with all her strength, but the human's movements were like water, flowing and soft, yet impossible to stop. Then with a single motion, the human countered. He caught Ceres's wrist, gently, but firmly. He twisted and pushed, and in seconds she was on the floor. The arena echoed with the sound of her fall. The hall went silent again. Ceres groaned, but she was not hurt badly. The human had shown mercy. He could have broken her, but he chose not to. He stepped back, giving her space to rise. The girls stared in disbelief. They had seen strength before, but not like this. His power was not in wild force, but in control, discipline, and precision. Ceres stood slowly, shame burning in her eyes. She did not speak. She bowed her head, something she had never done before. The human looked at Lyra, his voice calm. "Is this enough?" he asked. Lyra's lips trembled. Her pride screamed to say no, to demand more. But her voice failed. The weight of silence pressed down on her. The other girls whispered among themselves. For the first time, some of them felt respect instead of hate. Some even felt fear. The human stepped out of the arena, his movement still slow, steady, controlled. He walked past the crowd. His eyes met theirs one by one. None of them dared to laugh. As he reached the doors, he stopped. His voice carried softly through the hall. "Strength is not in mocking others," he said. "Strength is in silence, in patience, in control." The words cut through their hearts like blades. Lyra clenched her fists. Her pride would not die so easily. She turned to the others, her voice low. "This is not the end," she said. "We will find a way to break him." But deep inside, even she was not sure anymore. The academy hall was never truly quiet, but that day silence had taken root. The human had defeated Ceres without anger, without cruelty. He had moved with calm precision, and that calm was now haunting the alien girls. They gathered in corners, whispering to each other. Their silver eyes darted toward him as he stood at the edge of the arena. He did not boast. He did not demand praise. He simply waited, silent, like a stone. Lyra's pride burned hotter with every heartbeat. She could not accept what she had seen. She clenched her fists and spoke loudly so all could hear. "He got lucky. That is all. He cannot win forever." Her voice was sharp, but even she heard the tremor inside it. The human looked at her for only a moment, his gaze steady. He said nothing, and that silence cut deeper than any insult. It felt as though his calmness itself was mocking her rage. Another girl stepped forward. "Why does he not speak?" she whispered. "Why does he not show anger or pride?" The others shook their heads. None of them understood. In their culture, victory meant laughter, shouting, and claiming glory. But this human refused all of it. The guards watching the hall exchanged quiet words. "This one is different." One muttered. "He does not fight for pride. He fights for something else." The other nodded, uneasy. Lyra refused to let silence control the room. She ordered another challenge. This time not a fight, but a test of endurance. "Let him carry the stone weight," she demanded, pointing to a massive block used for training warriors. "Let him prove his body is not as weak as his planet." The crowd cheered, hoping to see him finally fail. The massive block was twice the size of an average alien. Only the strongest students could lift it even a little. The human walked toward it slowly, his boots echoing again. He studied the block, touched its surface with one hand. Then, with steady breath, he placed both hands beneath it. The girls laughed. "He will break his arms. He will fall. He will crawl away." Their voices rose like fire, but then, slowly, the block began to rise, inch by inch. It lifted from the floor, his muscles tightened, but his face stayed calm. He did not groan, he did not shout, he simply breathed, slow and steady. The crowd gasped. The block rose higher until it was above his chest. He held it there, unmoving. His silence filled the room again. The girls felt their laughter die on their lips. One whispered, "How can he hold it so long?" Another added, "He is not fighting for show. He is fighting with control." Finally, after what felt like forever, the human lowered the block gently to the ground. He did not drop it. He did not stumble. He placed it down with the same patience. He had lifted it. The room shook with disbelief. Some girls clapped their hands to their mouths. Others stared wide-eyed. Lyra's pride shattered again, but she shouted, "It means nothing. It is only weight. He cannot face real danger." Her words sounded weak even to her own ears. The human turned his gaze on her, his voice low and steady. "Strength is not about noise," he said. "It is about control." The words sank into their hearts. Some girls lowered their heads, ashamed of their laughter. Some began to wonder if Earth was not weak after all. But before anyone could speak again, the Academy's alarm suddenly rang. A red light flashed above them, a warning of danger outside the walls. The sound filled the hall with dread. The girls turned to the guards. "What is happening?" one shouted. The guards exchanged nervous looks. "There is an attack," one said. "Predators have entered the colony fields." Fear spread through the hall like fire. The alien girls were trained for pride, for mocking, for games. But when real danger struck, their voices shook, their bodies froze, all eyes turned, almost unwillingly, toward the human. He stood calm, his face steady. His silence was no longer strange. It was powerful. It was strength. And in that moment, the alien. Girls knew this was the true test. The alarm wailed across the academy. Its sharp cry pierced every wall. Red lights flashed over the hall, washing the alien girls' faces in blood-colored glow. For a moment, no one moved. Fear gripped the air like a storm. The guards rushed forward, weapons in hand, their voices urgent. "Predators in the outer fields, the colony walls are breached." The alien girls gasped. Their laughter from earlier felt like a distant dream. Lyra shouted, "How many?" Her voice cracked. A guard answered, "Dozens, maybe more. They are swift and hungry. If they reach the settlement, many will die." The girls exchanged fearful glances. They had trained in games. They had mocked enemies with words. But this was real. No stage, no laughter, just death waiting outside. Their hands trembled. Some whispered excuses. "We are not ready." "The soldiers will handle it." But the guards shook their heads. "The soldiers are away on patrol. Only the academy stands between the colony and the beasts." The words struck like a hammer. The young trainees were the only defense. Lyra tried to stand tall. "We must fight," she said. But even she felt her knees weaken. Pride alone could not shield her from fear. In the middle of the chaos, the human remained calm. He did not rush, he did not panic. His eyes studied the hall, then the doors leading outside. He breathed slowly, steady as a mountain. One girl shouted at him, her voice sharp. "You! What will you do now? Still, stay silent?" Her words shook, hiding the fear in her heart. The human turned his gaze to her, his voice low but clear. "I will fight," he said. Simple words. Yet they silenced the hall. The guards hesitated. "You are not trained for these creatures," one said. "They are not like the games here. They tear warriors apart." But the human only looked toward the outer doors. "Then I will not fight like a game," he answered. Lyra's chest tightened. She had laughed at him hours ago. Now she saw in his eyes no hesitation, no weakness. He walked to the weapon racks. His hand brushed over blades and rifles, but he chose none. Instead, he picked up a simple staff, worn and heavy. The alien girls whispered in shock. "He ignores the guns. He chooses wood. Is he mad?" Yet there was something about the way he held it, balanced and steady, as if the staff was part of him. The alarm screamed again, louder. The ground trembled. A distant roar echoed from outside. The predators had reached the outer fields, their voices like thunder. The guards prepared, fear on their faces. The alien girls stood frozen, torn between fear and pride. But the human walked past them, his boots striking the floor with the same calm rhythm. Step by step he moved toward the gates. Lyra's pride cracked under the weight of the moment. "Wait," she shouted. "You cannot go alone." But the human did not stop. His voice carried back to her, deep and steady. "Strength is tested in storms, not in laughter." The gates opened with a groan. Cold wind rushed inside, carrying the scent of dust and blood. Beyond the walls, dark shapes moved. Creatures with sharp claws and glowing eyes crept closer. Their growls shook the ground. The alien girls gathered at the doors. Their hearts beat fast, fear chained them in place, but their eyes could not look away. The human stepped out into the open. The red lights cast long shadows across the ground. The predators spotted him and roared. Their bodies surged forward, fast and wild, yet the human did not flinch. He gripped his staff tighter, his stance steady, his silence unbroken. The alien girls held their breath. Some whispered prayers. Others clutched their arms. They had mocked Earth as weak, fragile, useless. But now, in the shadow of death, only one figure stood between the beasts and their home. A man from Earth. The alarm still echoed through the colony as the ground shook under. The weight of the predators. The alien girls who had been laughing earlier now huddled together, their faces pale. Outside the academy gates, dark shapes moved quickly. Creatures with sharp claws, armored skin, and glowing red eyes. Their screeches cut through the air, louder than the sirens. The cadets had trained for battles, but none of them stepped forward. Their weapons shook in their hands and their knees trembled. Every mocking word they had spoken about Earth now seemed hollow. Then, without a word, the human moved. He stepped past the crowd of frightened girls, his boots striking the floor with calm certainty. His face showed no fear, no anger, only focus. The alien stared, confused. He carried no heavy armor, no advanced weapon, only a simple staff he had picked up from the training yard. The first predator lunged from the shadows. Its massive jaws opened wide, teeth like daggers glistening in the light. The alien girls screamed. But the human did not scream. He waited until the very last moment, then shifted his body sideways, striking the beast across its head with the staff. The sound cracked like thunder. The creature fell, stunned. Gasps rose from the cadets. Another predator rushed from behind. Without turning his head, the human dropped low, swept his staff across the ground, and knocked the creature off its legs. He stood again, calm, as though every movement was a practiced dance. His silence was more terrifying than the predator's screeches. The alien girls had expected clumsy panic from him. Instead, they saw something else: discipline, training, control. 3 predators surrounded him now, circling. Their claws scraped against the floor, sparks flying. The human did not back away. He tightened his grip on the staff, his eyes following every movement. When one beast leaped, he rolled under its strike and struck it in the stomach. The creature howled, crashing into the others. One cadet whispered, "How is he doing?" "This," another answered, voice shaking. "He fights like he has done this before many times." The fight grew faster. More predators charged in, their heavy bodies crashing against walls and scattering debris. Still, the human stood tall. He used the environment, smashing one creature against a pillar, forcing another into a narrow gap where it could not move freely. Every strike was simple but powerful, every dodge precise. He did not waste energy. For the first time, the Academy's training ground echoed not with laughter, but with stunned silence. One predator nearly reached the group of cadets, its claws raised to strike. The girls shrieked, backing away. But before the beast could land the blow, the human appeared in front of it, staff breaking down across its jaw. The creature dropped instantly, twitching in defeat. The cadets froze, realizing that this single human had placed himself between them and death. But the fight was not over. A larger predator, twice the size of the others, stepped forward. Its armored body gleamed, and its roar shook the walls. Even the bravest cadets fell to their knees. The human stood alone before it. For a moment, he closed his eyes, breathing slowly. Then he charged. The ground shook under his run, his staff swinging in perfect rhythm. The beast tried to crush him under its weight, but the human slid aside, climbing onto its back in one swift movement. The cadets gasped as he struck again, and again at the creature's weak spots, behind the neck, under the jaw, against the joints. The monster screamed, thrashing wildly, but the human held firm. Finally, with a final strike, the great predator collapsed to the ground, shaking the earth. Dust rose, covering everything in a gray cloud. When the dust cleared, the human stood alone, staff in hand, silent as ever. Around him lay the defeated predators. The alien girls could not speak. Their laughter was gone, their arrogance broken. All they could do was stare at the quiet figure who had proven, without words, what true strength meant. Smoke filled the air, curling into the Academy's open halls as the predators fled into the distance. The ground was littered with broken stone, claw marks, and shattered weapons. The siren still wailed, but softer now, like a fading echo of fear. The alien cadets slowly began to breathe again, their hearts pounding in their chests. Many of them looked at the human as though seeing him for the first time. He stood still, his staff lowered, his chest rising and falling with calm, steady breaths. Around him, the silence felt heavier than the fight itself. Then came a scream. It was sharp and desperate, cutting through the smoke. One of the girls had been trapped near the collapsed training tower. The battle had broken its support beams, and now heavy blocks of alien stone pinned her down. Flames licked the edges of the rubble as sparks from broken wires crackled around her. "Help me," she cried, her voice trembling. "Please, somebody." The other cadets froze. Their bodies wanted to run forward, but fear locked their legs in place. The fire was spreading fast, and the rubble was far too heavy for them to lift. They whispered to each other, guilt in their voices, but none of them moved. The girl's eyes filled with tears. She had been one of the loudest voices, mocking Earth earlier, the one who had called humans soft and useless. Now, in her moment of terror, she felt the weight of her own words crushing her more than the stones. Before despair could take her, a shadow moved through the smoke. The human. He did not rush blindly. His steps were steady, his eyes scanning the danger. Sparks jumped dangerously close to his skin. Flames crackled beside him, but he did not flinch. The cadets shouted warnings. "The fire will spread. The stones will crush you too." But he did not turn back. The trapped girl saw him through her tears. For a moment she could not speak. Her throat felt dry, her pride shattered. Finally her voice broke. "Why? Why would you help me?" The human knelt beside the rubble. His silence was answer enough. He pressed his hands against the largest block. Muscles tightened, veins stood out on his arms. Slowly, with a deep breath, he lifted. The stone groaned but rose higher, inch by inch. The girl gasped. She tried to crawl, but her leg was pinned under another smaller block. Without hesitation, the human shifted, balancing the weight of one stone while pushing the other aside with his foot. It was raw strength, but also careful control. Sweat ran down his face, mixing with ash and dust, but he did not stop. At last, the girl was free. He scooped her into his arms as though she weighed nothing, holding her close against his chest. Behind him, another piece of rubble fell where she had been lying moments ago. The cadets gasped again, realizing that if he had hesitated even a heartbeat longer, she would have been gone. Through fire, through smoke, he carried her out. The flames painted his silhouette like a figure carved from steel. The cadet stepped aside as he emerged, silent, the girl safe in his arms. He lowered her gently to the ground. Her eyes were wide, her voice shaking. I was wrong, she whispered. Everything I said about humans, I was wrong. The others lowered their heads in shame. Their arrogance, their laughter, all of it seemed foolish now. They had mocked the very strength that had just saved one of their own. The girl looked up at him again, her voice softer. Thank you. The human did not answer. He simply gave a small nod and turned his gaze back toward the smoke, ready in case danger returned. His silence carried more meaning than any words could, and in that silence the academy changed forever. The fires were finally under control. Emergency drones floated above the academy ruins, spraying foam across the burning rubble. The predators had been driven back into the wild, their screeches now only faint echoes across the hills. But inside the courtyard, silence remained heavier than smoke. The alien cadet stood in a circle, eyes fixed on the human. He did not stand tall in pride, nor did he speak to claim victory. He simply leaned his staff against the wall and sat on, a broken stone, brushing ash from his arms. His breathing was steady, calm, as if he had done nothing more than finish a long day's work. The girl he had rescued sat nearby, her legs wrapped in bandages from the medics. Her eyes never left him. Just hours ago, she had laughed the loudest at Earth, calling humans weak, soft, and pitiful. Now her voice trembled when she whispered, I was wrong. Her words carried across the courtyard. The other cadets shifted, uncomfortably. Some looked down at the ground. Some looked away, ashamed. The laughter that once filled their halls now felt like a cruel memory. Another girl finally spoke, her voice low. We mocked him, all of us. And still he saved her. Not just her, a third cadet added. He saved us all. If he hadn't stood against the predators, none of us would still be standing here. The rescued girl lowered her head. Why would he do it? She whispered. After everything we said about him? Why? The human finally looked at them. His eyes were steady, calm, but behind them there was something heavier, something none of the cadets could name. He did not speak. He simply held their gaze for a moment, then turned back to the fire-lit ruins. That silence pierced them more deeply than any lecture could. The cadets remembered their cruel jokes, the way they had called Earth useless. Now, the same Earthborn human had risked his life for them without hesitation. His silence felt like a mirror, forcing them to face themselves. The shame was unbearable. One by one, the cadets lowered to their knees. Not from command, not from fear, but from respect. They had mocked Earth for being weak, but what they had witnessed was not weakness. It was a strength none of them had ever been taught. The rescued girl's voice cracked as she said, I am sorry. Tears filled her eyes, not from fear this time, but from regret. The human studied her for a moment. Finally, for the first time since his arrival, he gave a small, almost invisible smile. It was not triumph, not mockery, but forgiveness. That simple gesture broke what was left of their pride. A murmur spread through the cadets, their voices trembling. We were wrong. Earth is not weak. Humans are stronger than we ever understood. The weight of their arrogance collapsed under the truth. The academy courtyard, once filled with mocking voices, now carried words of respect. Some cadets stepped forward, placing their weapons on the ground before him as a sign of humility. Others clenched their fists, vowing silently to never speak. Against Earth again, the human did not stand to claim their respect. He did not bask in it. He simply sat quietly, watching the smoke drift into the night sky. The rescued girl wiped her eyes. Her voice was softer now, but firm. From this day, I will never laugh at Earth again. Instead, I will learn from it. The others nodded, their shame turning slowly into resolve. And though the human still said nothing, his presence had already spoken the truth. Strength was not in mocking, but in enduring. That night, the academy changed. The girls who once laughed at Earth now carried a new weight in their hearts, a weight of respect, and all because of one silent human who had shown them what true power meant. The academy courtyard was quiet long after the flames were gone. The cadets sat in a wide circle around the human, their voices hushed, their arrogance broken. For the first time, they looked at him not with mockery, but with searching eyes. They wanted to understand. The rescued girl sat closest, her bandaged leg stretched out before her. She had whispered her apology, but something inside her still burned with questions. At last, she found the courage to speak. Human. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would you fight for us? Why would you risk your life for those who laughed at you? The others leaned forward, eager for his answer. For a long time, he said nothing. His silence pressed against them like a weight, the same silence that had followed him since the moment he arrived. But now, slowly, he rose to his feet. His eyes swept across the group. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, steady, and carried the kind of strength that came not from muscles, but from memory. Earth, he began, is not weak. The cadets straightened. His words were simple, but they struck like lightning. You think we are soft because we do not carry claws or armored skin, he continued. You think we are powerless because our bodies are fragile compared to yours. But you do not know us. You do not know what it means to survive where we come from. He paused, his gaze drifting upward toward the alien sky. The cadets followed, his eyes as though trying to imagine the blue planet they had once mocked. On Earth, he said, we learned strength the hard way. Not through comfort, not through mocking others, but through pain. Our world gave us storms that drowned cities, quakes that swallowed towns, fire that burned through forests. We did not run. We rebuilt. Again and again. His words painted images in their minds. Humans standing in ruined cities, lifting stones, together rising from ashes. And it was not only nature, he added, his voice lower now. It was ourselves. We fought wars against each other. We destroyed what we built with our own hands. We bled. We lost. But even then we endured. The courtyard was silent except for his voice. The cadets leaned in, eyes wide. Some of them shivered, not from fear, but from the weight of the truth. We are not strong because we are the biggest, he said, pressing his hand to his chest. We are strong because we endure. Because no matter how many times the world breaks us, we rise again. The rescued girl's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, we thought strength was in mocking. We thought it was in laughing at weakness. The human shook his head. True power is not in mocking. It is in enduring. It is in standing when everything else tells you to fall. The cadets lowered their heads. Some clenched their fists in shame. Others wiped silent tears from their eyes. They had never heard words like this before, never seen strength that did not roar but spoke softly, carrying scars within it. One cadet finally said, we judged Earth without knowing it. We thought you were powerless, but you are unbreakable. The human gave a faint nod. He did not smile, but his eyes softened. The rescued girl bowed her head deeply. Teach us, she whispered. Teach us how to endure like humans do. A murmur spread through the circle. One by one, the cadets raised their voices. Teach us. Show us. We want to learn. The human stood among them, quiet, once more. But in that silence, the truth had already been spoken. Earth was not weak. Humanity was not powerless. And now the daughters of the stars wished to carry that hidden strength within themselves. That night, the mocking voices of the Academy were gone forever. In their place, the first seeds of respect and unity began to grow. The next morning, the Academy felt different. The same stone walls stood, the same training fields stretched across the grounds, but the air carried a new weight. No one laughed at Earth anymore. No one dared. The cadets gathered early, standing in silence around the courtyard. They waited, not for their usual instructors, but for the human. He walked toward them with steady steps, his staff resting across his shoulder. His expression was calm as always, yet every girl straightened at his presence, as if a commander had arrived. 1. Cadet broke the silence. "We asked you to teach us, will you?" He studied them for a moment, his gaze sweeping across their faces. Then, with a small nod, he stepped into the training field. "If you want to learn," he said simply, "then follow." The girls hurried after him. At first, they expected lessons in strength. They thought he would show them how to fight with weapons, how to strike as he had struck the predators. But he did not. Instead, he made them stand in stillness. "Breathe," he said. "Control your fear. Calm your heart. Strength begins here." The cadets shifted uncomfortably. They were used to shouting drills, to clashing blades. But now, under his watchful eyes, they closed their eyes and tried to breathe as he did, slow, steady, disciplined. The quiet felt strange, but also powerful. Then came endurance. He led them through long runs across the rocky fields, their bodies aching, their legs trembling. Some wanted to give up, but his silent presence kept them moving. He did not scold or laugh, he simply kept running, his pace steady as if saying, "If I can endure, so can you." By the end, the girls collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air. The human stood among them, his chest rising and falling with ease. He looked at them and said, "This is strength, not in winning one battle, but in rising every time you fall." The cadets listened with wide eyes. His words carried no arrogance, no pride, only truth. Day after day, the training continued. He showed them how to fight with precision instead of rage, how to think before striking, how to work together instead of mocking each other. He taught them that silence could be sharper than insults, that patience could break an enemy faster than anger. One girl who had once laughed the loudest now stayed closest to him, copying every movement with care. Another who had once joined in the mockery now encouraged others not to give up during the long runs. Slowly, the laughter that once mocked Earth returned, but it was different now, lighter, warmer, shared with him instead of against him. The bond grew. The cadets began to see him not as an outsider, but as one of them. They started calling him teacher even though he never demanded the title. Respect had replaced arrogance, and trust had replaced scorn. One evening, after a long day of training, the rescued girl approached him. Her voice was soft, but filled with new strength. "When you first came, we only saw your silence. We thought it was weakness, but now I understand. Silence is power. Endurance is power. You have given us more than training. You have given us a bond." The human looked at her, and for the first time he gave a true smile. It was small, but it lit her heart like fire. The bond between Earth and the Academy was no longer built on mockery or pride. It was built on respect, discipline, and the lessons of endurance. And as the alien stars shone above them, the cadets who once mocked Earth now stood side by side with the human, ready to carry his strength into the future. Weeks passed, and the Academy was no longer the same place it had been. The stone courtyard that once echoed with cruel jokes about Earth now rang with the sound of discipline. Boots striking the ground in rhythm, voices shouting commands, laughter, shared in training instead of mockery. The cadets had changed. Their eyes carried focus, Their movements carried strength and their voices carried respect. The human had not forced this change. He had simply lived his truth, and they had followed. But news traveled fast. Beyond the academy walls, whispers spread of another predator raid, larger, deadlier than the one before. Colonists in the nearby valley sent desperate calls for help. Fear spread through the academy again, but this time it did not turn into panic. The cadets looked at each other, then at the human. He stood in the training yard, staff in hand, the same quiet presence as always. Without a word, the cadets formed ranks behind him. No one needed to be told. The bond was already there. They marched together to the valley. When the predators struck, the cadets did not cower. They moved as one, their blades flashing, their voices strong. Where once they would have scattered, now they stood shoulder to shoulder. And always at the front, the human moved with calm certainty, guiding them with action more than words. Dikau. Battle was fierce. Dust filled the air, claws ripped at the ground, and screams echoed through the valley. But this time the cadets did not break. They remembered his lessons. Breathe, endure, fight with patience. When one girl stumbled, another pulled her up. When fear threatened to return, they steadied each other. And when the predators pressed harder, the human stepped forward, his staff, striking with the same silent power that had first stunned them. Together they turned the tide. Hours later, the valley was quiet again. The predators lay defeated, the colonists safe. The cadets stood side by side, battered but unbroken. Their breaths came heavy, but their eyes shone with pride, not arrogance, but pride born of survival. In the middle of the group, the human stood silent as ever, his gaze calm. He did not raise his staff in triumph nor speak of his role. But the cadets looked at him with gratitude deeper than words. The rescued girl who had once mocked him the loudest stepped forward. Her armor was scratched, her face smeared with dust, but her eyes were steady. She bowed her head. "We laughed at Earth," she said, voice carrying across the field. "We called you weak. But today, we fought because of you. We endured because of you. And now we will defend Earth as you defended us." The others lowered their heads too, their voices rising in agreement. "We will defend it. We will fight beside it. We will never laugh at it again." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. The human looked at them, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, something unexpected happened. He laughed. It was not loud nor mocking, but warm, like the crack of sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The cadets froze, then smiled, then laughed too. Their voices rose together, not sharp and cruel as before, but full of relief, joy, and unity. The sound carried across the valley, a strange music made of different worlds now bound together. It was the last laugh. Not at him, but with him. And in that shared laughter, Earth was no longer the weak and powerless planet of their jokes. It was a world of endurance, of quiet strength, of bonds forged in struggle. The human stood among them, silent once more, but his heart lighter than it had been in years, for he knew this truth. The mocking voices were gone forever, replaced by voices that would fight beside him. Together they laughed as comrades. Together they stood as one.